Saygıdeğer
Distinguished participants, distinguished guests, I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting. My name is Özlem Cinemre from the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey. I'm in charge of Treasury, Development Funding, Institutions and Wholesale Banking. I'm Deputy Director General in charge of these aspects. And I'd like to extend my greetings to each and every one of you on my behalf and on behalf of the bank and my colleagues at the bank. I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance, for your valuable time. The Development and Investment Bank of Turkey, maybe you know it. Maybe there are some who don't know it. I'd like to briefly introduce the bank to you. Our bank has a history, well-established history of 47 years. It was established in 1975 in Ankara. The name then was Gaziantep State Industry and Workers Bank. Then in 1980, it was merged with the Bank of Tourism, and one of the important steps, one of the important milestones in the history of the bank is that in 1991, a small portion of its shares were made public, listed in the stock exchange, and in 2018, one of the radical amendments were introduced into the law. With that legal amendment, new missions were added to the mandate of the bank, and also a very large-scale transformation and change process was kicked off. Since 2018, what happened in the bank? The location, the headquarters were relocated. After an activity of 43 years in Ankara, in 2019, it moved to Istanbul. Its headquarters moved to Istanbul. We still have a small office in Ankara, but the main HQ is Istanbul. And the name of the bank changed. It is not the Development Bank of Turkey. Now it is the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey, because we also carry out investment banking services and activities. The whole organization of the bank changed. It had a history in Ankara, but now in Istanbul, it has a new organizational structure now. So the whole infrastructure systems of the bank, its technologies, all changed, and all kinds of procedures, modus operandi, all changed. And it established a portfolio management company through which the Turkish Development Fund was created, Technology Fund, SME Fund, and several other funds are managed and governed by the bank. So since its establishment, so many changes took place throughout its history. It's not possible to count all of them, but even the changes since 2018 made us more dynamic, more agile, and we have now more missions. We can create a greater impact in this development and investment bank. The owner of the bank is the Ministry of Treasury and Finance. 99% of the shares are held by the ministry. Of course, this is a great power behind us and great strength behind us. And our bank has the greatest rating in Turkey. It has a score of BB minus, which is equal to the rating of the country, which is very meaningful for a bank. Of course, our mission is to become a development bank, and also we aim at contributing sustainable economic development of Turkey without compromising environmental, social, and climate commitments. We are aiming at supporting all kinds of investments and projects. Of course, we can't do this with our means only. The funding, development funding institutions, apart from our main shareholders, provide great support to us. And with the funding, development funding institutions, we implement several projects, and the grant program we are going to present to you today is one of those programs. It is the Formal Employment Creation Project. Formal Employment Creation Project has a loan component financed by the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey, and also grant component and technical support components. the grant component is financed by the European Union under the Facility for Refugees in Turkey, which is abbreviated as FRIT 2. And this grant is going to be provided by the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey under the management of the World Bank. We told this on all occasions and platforms. We are very excited with this overall project and especially the grant program under this project. The grant component, from a holistic perspective, we can say that it has a very large scale. The amount is 70 million euros. In this sense, we are very excited because it will contribute to Turkey substantially. It is a huge contribution. And second important point is its scope. As regards its scope, of course, geographical scope will be presented by my colleagues, but in terms of the scope of the content, not only for the large-scale enterprises, but also for small and medium-scale enterprises, opportunity to access funding and grants will be provided, and there is no sectoral restriction, or there's not going to be any restriction to sectors. We have an exclusive list, of course, but this applies to all areas in all projects, of course. And thirdly, we have a technical support component, which will be presented by my colleagues, but under that component, we're going to provide several training sessions and capacity building opportunities. But most importantly, which is very valuable to me, is the fourth factor to me. From a bigger picture perspective, for the sustainable growth of Turkey, some of the barriers before that sustainable growth of Turkey, to eliminate those barriers, we're going to provide some solutions which are mainly related to employment, because, you know, in Turkey we have an issue of unemployment for several years, and which exacerbated during the COVID-19 period. It grew bigger due to the pandemic, and this grant program mainly will contribute to employment and formal employment creation. And of course, in the subcomponents of that project, women employment, refugees employment, and other areas of employment will be highlighted, and these are very important under these subcomponents. Ultimately, finally, this grant program, with all its features and aspects, will have a lot of impacts, will create a lot of impacts. Well implemented, the outputs of this program will be very beneficial for Turkey, and we are very happy with that. We are very pleased to be part of it, because for more than 2 years we have been preparing for this project. In order to present grant program to the potential applicants or applicant companies, we decided to develop a series of grant program presentation meetings. 6 meetings were planned, 5 online, 1 physical, and the only physical meeting is here in Gaziantep. I'm very honored with that. We are very happy with my team. We arrived here last night. Although we are behind the closed doors, we can feel the energy of the city and its people. This is not my first time personally. I had opportunity to visit this city on several occasions. Every time I come here, I admire the city and what the city may offer us. You may also participate in the future presentation meetings. We will try to answer most of your questions here in this meeting, but we will have 3 more meetings, online meetings for presentation of the grant program. But if your questions are remain unanswered here in this meeting, you can also participate in the future ones. We are going to talk about the application guideline and presentation. These are all planned these are all published on case.org website, which is specifically designed for this project. We'll be happy if you follow that website, and I hope that today's meeting will be fruitful for all of you and all of us. And we had great hopes here in Gaziantep, because we are aware of the fact that Gaziantep is very important for this project, and hopefully Gaziantep will make a difference in as regards applications. We are here to support you and answer your questions. And if your questions are not answered here in this meeting, you can contact us in the future for clarification. I hope that this project will be fruitful and beneficial for the companies, for all of you, for all of us, and for the country. Now I'd like to hand over to our colleagues from the project implementation team. We can start with Ayşegül. Thank you very much. Distinguished participants, distinguished guests, my name is Ayşegül Çerçe from the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey. I'm responsible for development cooperation and wholesale banking. I'm head of department, and my unit is the project implementing team of the formal employment creation project. We have individual consultants and relevant units that implement this project together. And today we are going to present the project. We'll inform you about the project and the grant program. Our experts will deliver the presentation for information, and then we will collect your questions verbally. And also there is simultaneous interpretation in English and Arabic as well. This meeting is also broadcast live, streamed live. We can also collect the questions from the online participants. So in the Q&A part, our online participants can convey their questions. We can see their questions here on our computer, and we will try to answer your questions at the end of the meeting. It's a great pleasure for us to be here in person. As mentioned by Özlem, we specifically selected Gaziantep because this region, this city is very important, has an important place among 24 selected project provinces. So we came here in order to get your views, your questions directly. Of course, we are expecting your applications, but after the meeting, we will have the chance to talk face-to-face, one-to-one. Thank you very much. I'd like to extend my greetings and regards. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to our project expert, Naz Karabağlı, then to be followed by Eren Bey for our information presentation. Thank you very much. Distinguished participants, I'd like to extend my greetings to each and every one of you on my behalf and on behalf of my organizations. Welcome. I'm from the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey. My name is Naz Karabağlı. I'm going to give you an information about the Formal Employment Creation Project Grant Program. First, we have important notes to make. This presentation includes the Turkish translations of the grant program application guideline and its annexes at the link address kayst.org in the call for proposal part of this link. And it has been prepared for information purposes for potential applicants, I mean you. In case of any conflict between this presentation and the grant program application guideline and its annexes, the English versions of the guideline and annexes will be binding. And finally, this presentation was drafted with the financial support of the European Union. The content is solely under the responsibility of the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey. It does not necessarily reflect the views of the European Union. Here is the presentation plan. First, we will start with the description of the project, to be followed by the project components, and then general framework of the grant component. Finally, we will inform you about the conditions of the grant program. The title of the project is Formal Employment Creation Project. And the overall objective of the project is to enhance the conditions for formal job creation by firms operating in growing economic sectors with high employment potential located in selected 24 provinces with high incidence of Syrians under temporary protection for the benefits of Turkish citizens and refugees. And with this project, in order to expand their business, they needed funding, resources and skills, and the opportunity to access these opportunities will be provided, through which we aim at increasing formal job creation. The project combines resources from the World Bank and EU Facility for Refugees in Turkey, two funds, for a total budget of 396 million euros. And the project, as mentioned by Özlem Hanım, has three components. The first one is with the guarantee of the Minister of Treasury and Finance, the loan given to the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey, a loan agreement was signed on June 1, 2020 and entered into force on September 25, 2020. And the second component is going to be financed under the Facility for Refugees in Turkey 2 funds. This is going to be the grant to be provided under EU FRIT 2 funds, and grant agreement was signed on February 2020. 2021, 1 year ago, and it became effective on August 6, 2021. And the last component is technical assistant component or technical support. It is funded through the grants and lending. Here in this chart, you can see the components of our project and the total amounts and the breakdown of the total amounts by these components. On top, you see the loan component, World Bank loan component, which accounts for 125.8 million euros, which is in the form of direct loans, and 188.7 million euros in the form of Apex loans. Under technical and institutional support component, we have section 3.A and section 3.C. These are subcomponents which are related to loans, sub-loans, the applicants and beneficiaries of sub-loans, and also the sub-loan of participating financial institutions. And for TKYB, capacity building is aimed at through technical and institutional support component. At the lower part of this chart, you see component 2, which is a grant to be provided through the Facility for Refugees in Turkey of the European Union. You can see 70 million euros is allocated for the grants program, and 4 million euros is allocated for the implementation support of the World Bank. On the technical and institutional support part, for the grants, 5.9 million euros of resources was allocated, and the grant for the sub-grant beneficiary firms, skills development and capacity building for the sub-grant implementing agency, which is TKYB, and also monitoring and evaluation will be allocated with certain amounts. For the grants and for the loan components of the project, there are important implementation principles. The first one is all components of the project are implemented in accordance with the World Bank's environmental and social standards. Under the scope, the environmental and social standards of the World Bank and TKYB's environmental and social management framework, and the project's environmental and social commitment plans, stakeholder engagement plans, labor management procedures, and other relevant World Bank and TKYB policies and regulations will be applicable. And these compose our environmental and social framework. And secondly, on the technical and institutional capacity building support component, the support will be provided to improve the institutional capacities of beneficiary companies and implementing financial institutions and the skills of newly employed persons. Under this category, under loan components, sub-loan user firms and participating financial institutions, and in the grant component, sub-grant beneficiary firms and TKYB are expected to be supported. And thirdly, we will have a focus on women-inclusive firms. Women-inclusive companies are quite important under this project. If a company has at least one female shareholder with properly documented representation and management powers, or has at least one female senior manager, or have female representation of at least 25% in middle management, or employs women at a higher rate than the average observed in the relevant sector, that company is going to be regarded as a women-inclusive company. Now, I'd like to give you information about our loan component. This loan component has direct and apex lending, two sub-components as direct lending or apex lending. In direct lending, the World Bank loan will be provided to the large enterprises by TKYB in the form of direct lending. TKYB is providing investment and working capital loans directly to eligible large enterprises who employ equal to or more than 250 employees. Large enterprises should be financially viable and already have a consolidated record of job creation and want to expand their business and generate markets. Maximum sub-loan amount for a sub-project is 5 million euros and 15 million euros for an eligible firm. If you're interested in this support, more information can be requested from TKYB's Corporate Banking and Project Finance Department. The other sub-loan component is apex lending, which is wholesale banking loans. Under this component, TKYB is going to provide subsidiary financing or loan to eligible participating financial institution to on-land SMEs operating in project provinces. And it's going to be in the form of apex lending. And this is going to be provided to the SMEs operating in project provinces and employs less than 250 employees for their investment and working capital needs. If you're interested in benefiting from apex lending, the maximum sub-loan amount for a sub-project is 3 million euros and 6 million euros for an eligible firm. In this apex lending loan, there are 6 PFIs or leasing institutions, which are Yapı Kredi Leasing, Vakıf Leasing, Garanti Leasing, QNB Finance Leasing, AK Leasing, and İş Leasing. So more information can be requested from these participating financial institutions. Now, I'd like to provide you information about the basic features, key features of the grant component. Firms, beneficiary firms, will get grant on condition that they will create formal employment for the Turkish citizens and also refugees. And also from the beneficiary companies, they will be asked to provide a record of a new employment for 18 months, and they are expected to present an employment plan for us, showing that they will create employment for 18 or formal employment for 18 months. And in order to verify this condition for employment, these are going to be verified and cross-checked with the Social Security Institution reports, which are official. Under grant components and grant program, there is an exclusion list that will be taken into consideration. So there is not going to be any sectoral restriction apart from that exclusion list of the World Bank and TKYB, and they will be able to access the loan or grants under this project if they are not in that exclusion list. An important key feature of this grant component is that women inclusive enterprises will be encouraged to participate. And if the program is implemented successfully, 770 beneficiary companies are expected to be supported, and 255 of them are expected to be women-inclusive companies or enterprises. And also, the number of the formal employment created by the sub-grant beneficiary companies is expected to be 9,000, and 2,700 of them are expected to be women. And now for the technical and institutional support component of the project for the sub-grant beneficiaries, capacity building activities will be also organized. Our bank In line with the objectives and the priorities of COAST project, designed a grant program and published a call for proposal for projects. And the overall objective of the grant program is to enhance the conditions for formal job creation by firms operating in growing economic sectors with high employment potential and located in selected 24 provinces with high incidence of Syrians under temporary protection for the benefit of Turkish citizens and refugees. Beneficiary firms will receive the grant conditional on formal employment creation of Turkish citizens and refugees, including the emergency social safety net beneficiaries. There are two priorities under this program. The first priority is to create and increase formal employment for refugees and Turkish citizens. And the second priority is to create and increase formal employment for women. In the design of this program, we have a program national, which are as follows. In project provinces, there are limited employment creation and formal employment opportunities, and there are limited financing opportunities for firms in provinces where refugees are concentrated. And there are social and labor market problems affecting both refugees and Turkish citizens, and there is a need to facilitate the transition of emergency social safety net ESSM beneficiaries to formal employment. And also there is low awareness of the employability of Syrians. As you can see, these are the selected project provinces under the Formal Employment Creation Project Grant Program. So this list also includes Gaziantep and the surrounding provinces, which have high employment potential and harbor growing economic sectors. As for the details of the grant program budget is 70 million euros. And the grant program, the allocation and the percentages of the sub-grants and the support quantities by company sizes, the 70 million euros is planned to be distributed as follows. SMEs, that is SMEs, small enterprises between 1 to 49 employees, it's 14 million euros. Medium enterprises, that is employees of 50 to 249, 22.4 million euros. And for large enterprises that have 250 employees or over, 33.6 million euros have been allocated. And the beneficiary the minimum and the maximum sub-grant amounts that the beneficiaries can benefit from, it's between 55,000 to 45,000 for small enterprises, between 25,000 to 125,000 euros for medium enterprises, and between 40,000 and 300,000 euros for large enterprises. They are eligible to ask for sub-grants. And another important rule is that the requested sub-grant amount must be between 50% and 70% of the total eligible cost of the sub-project. So these ratios explain our support percentages. To expand it further, the small, medium, and large-scale company examples have been prepared for us, which we want to go over with you. And a small scale company example, let's assume that 15,000 euros, that is the minimum amount, and the maximum amount is 45,000 euros. So two separate budget summaries have been prepared for the minimum on the left and maximum on the right. And as you will notice, 70% of the total sub-grant
is constituted, is 70% is the sub-grant. And another important rule is at the bottom part of the table, the human resources costs is at least 70% and at most 90% of the total eligible cost. And the objective here is to encourage the creation of formal employment. And another example, for a medium-sized company by minimum and maximum support amounts, in order for them to request 25,000 euros, if they ask for 70%, which is the maximum, you see the breakdown. And at the same time, the human resources cost is when it's adjusted at 70% or 90%, what amounts they correspond to are presented in the table. And finally, funding source and grant amounts for large-scale companies, that is between 40,000 and 300,000. There are two separate project budget examples, and in the same way, the maximum grant amount support when it's requested, what kind of a sub-project is to be prepared, and the human resources cost, at what quantities they could be, are presented. And this presentation and the relevant examples are available in the project website. And if you want to examine it in further detail, you can apply. And after this, we will move on to the eligibility criteria. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Eren Düşkün from Project Implementation Department. Now, before Mr. Eren begins, the presentation, it can be downloaded at the address www.kayist.org. It can be downloaded from this address. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Eren Düşük. I'm working in the Development and Cooperation Banking Department, and what kind of eligibility criteria are applicable and how they will be used will be explained. First of all, the applications, who can submit the applications and which applicants that's eligible. And then I'm going to talk about the eligibility of sub-projects, whether there's a sectoral based restriction, and the durations, how long they can be, and where the activity places can be, and how long, and the eligibility of the sub-projects will be discussed. First, who can apply? An applicant firm must be a legal person. So what does that mean? They can be a joint stock company, limited liability, collective, ordinary limited partnership, or limited partnership company. So within this scope, the individual companies are not deemed appropriate to submit applications, and we receive this question a lot. As I have said, as it has been based before, based on what criteria can the companies receive support? Let me expand this. There are three scales, that is small scale companies, medium scale companies, and large scale companies. And these are classified based on the number of employees. So currently, SME management, or based on the EU's SME legislation, doesn't have a classification, but only at the application stage, the information and documents specified employee numbers constitute the basis. And the company must be a fully private-owned enterprise. That is, the publicly owned businesses are not eligible, and cooperatives and NGOs are not eligible for this call. And where can they be registered, the applicants? The applicants are expected to be officially registered in Turkey, but the project activities must be carried out in the selected 24 provinces. So the applicant company's headquarters could be in Samsun. Samsun is not our implementation province, but if the activities are going to be carried out in Gaziantep, then it's eligible. And the company must have been established at least 2 years prior to the date of call for proposals for notice. So it was December 17, 2021. They must have been founded 2 years prior to that, and they mustn't have any previous non-paid or overdue liabilities, and they shouldn't have any overdue social charges and tax payments without exceeding the legal limits of prevailing legislation or defaulted loans. And they should be directly responsible for the preparation and management of the sub-project, and they shouldn't be acting as intermediaries. And within the scope of the formal employment creation project, there's a loan component that is the leg of this component, and they shouldn't be receiving or must not have received a loan within the scope of the loan component of formal employment creation project, as Ms. Nas has mentioned. And as for the eligibility of activities, we don't have any categorical restrictions on eligible economic sectors, except for the sectors excluded according to the World Bank safeguard regulations, and they should be compatible with the environmental and social commitment plan of the project, and they shouldn't be in the safeguard regulations. So we have a list of banned or restricted sectors, and they consist of similar rules, our bank and the World Bank, and has to be an application, and the activity must be outside these sectors. Where can you access it? There's a website on the we have a project documents, and under it there's a tab on formal employment creation project documents. It can be found there, and then there will be an environmental and social assessment, and within that scope there will be two separate categories that will be deemed eligible for us, and World Bank medium risk and World Bank low risk categories are shown. So the applicant is expected to be in these categories. And the high-risk activities will not be deemed eligible. And the project duration, they can have a duration of between 18 to 21 months, but it is expected, the companies are expected to create and maintain formal employment for 18 months. And an applicant company, as a legal company, with a certain specific tax number, maybe they can be partners of more than one companies, or they can be in cooperation with various entities, but we're taking as the basis the tax number, and a legal entity applicant can only submit one proposal. And the location of the sub-provinces, sub-projects, we've got 24 provinces. I don't want to list them one by one. You can examine them on the documents. And the general rules as for the costs, all costs should be incurred by the beneficiary within the scope of the sub-project budget approved by the bank. So at the assessment stage, following the contract that is being signed, until the budget that is deemed suitable, all the expenditures must have taken place. So prior to signing the contract, a cost that is spent cannot be presented as having been spent throughout the duration of the contract. And the costs should be reasonable, justified, and clearly explained, verified, and financially sound, especially with regards to efficiency and economy, and they should comply with effective management principles, and the eligible costs should be based on actual costs verified by supporting documents, and sub-project budget will be prepared in euro currencies, and the costs should be compatible with the general and specific objectives of the sub-project, and they should be included in the sub-project budget. And no lump sum costs will be considered as eligible except for indirect costs. And as for costs, the most important issue is the cost of human resources, because the budget presented by an applicant, the budget can consist of between minimum 70% and maximum 90%. Imagine there's an application of 100,000 Turkish liras, so 70,000 to 90,000 are expected to be allocated for employment activities. And later on, I'll be talking about it in the assessment stage. And the additional personnel employed will be the basis for evaluation, and they will get a higher rating. And when we continue with eligible direct costs, working capital costs covers all operating costs estimated for the sub-project, and they consist of multiple sub-project budget items such as production materials, such as raw materials, ancillary materials, components, sub-assemblies, and utilities, and maintenance and repair costs. And another one is fixed investment costs, and fixed investment costs are the costs needed for the new investments and spare parts and software, etc. It shouldn't be small-scale construction works and auxiliary service facilities can be up to 5% of the total eligible direct costs in the sub-budget project, and major construction work costs are not eligible costs. That's why we have a 5% limit. Used second-hand refurbished repaired machinery and equipment are not regarded as eligible costs. They are expected to be brand new, and the budget items cannot reference a specific grant model or origin while preparing the sub-grant budget at the proposal stage. And as for other costs and services, the expenses related to consultancy, publication, research, audit, evaluation, visibility activities, and promotional activities incurred during the implementation are indicated, but as work permit costs can incur for refugee employment, and that's eligible when you write it in the relevant section. This will be covered by the budget. And as for the eligible indirect costs, the indirect costs incurred in carrying out the action may be eligible for flat rate funding, but the total must not exceed the percentage of the estimated total eligible direct costs stated in the respective section. And indirect costs are eligible that provided that they don't include costs assigned to another budget heading, and there are administrative and incidental expenditures, and they are indicated in the budget. And incidentals are like a reserve. There's a flat rate of 3%, and the use of the incidental expenditures is subject to the approval of the bank. And ineligible costs, there's a lot of information here, and this is merely a summary. Please take into account that debt service charges will not be eligible. Costs declared by another sub-grant or work program receiving EU grant won't be supported by our bank, and credits and grants given to third parties, and taxes including value-added taxes, but the applicant can get an exception for VAT to benefit from VAT exemption. Customs and import duties are not eligible, and bank charges, cost of guarantees, and similar charges, and especially the conversion costs and exchange losses associated with any of the euro accounts related to the sub-project and from any currency losses are not eligible, and contributions in kind submitted by the applicant are not eligible. Leasing costs, depreciation costs, and costs incurred by those other than the beneficiary form will not be eligible, and vehicle purchase and rental costs for personal use, or the costs of preparatory work and other activities before the start of the sub-project. An example would be generally companies can receive consultancy, and that consultancy cost can be written in the budget, but if it's a cost item before it is incurred, you cannot write it in the project, and it won't be deemed suitable then. And the detailed information is found in the grant program website, kayis.org, and they are available in Turkish and English, and the application guideline and application form can also be downloaded in Turkish, English, and also in Arabic for information purposes. You can download them from the call for proposals on the website on the third column in project documents. And if there's anything that you cannot reach, you can contact us, and they are found at kayis.org address. And how to apply? On the right-hand side, you see the apply button. When you click that, this page will be displayed, and you can submit your applications on this KISS platform. Only a mobile phone one-time code is used for login. So it's not a long-term login. And all these documents, the supporting documents, particularly the draft documents, are available in this platform. And after you log in, what stages? First of all, there is the Annex A, which is the application form and the business plan. There are boxes, tabs, and then you can see them in the relevant platform. And as you complete them, the application form and business plan Annex A will have been created. And Annex B, subgrant project, it's also going to be prepared through the KISS platform. All the information in numbers and details will constitute your budget. And as the budget is being prepared, please be careful about certain rules. We've got subgrant support rates as well as support limits for small, medium, and large enterprises. So it is important, it is requested that you comply with these rates, because if you do not, the system will automatically reject the completion of your application. And Annex C is the subgrant employment plan and performance indicators. It is again going to be prepared through the KISS platform, and the employment plan, which is the most important leg, both important in terms of refugees and women employment, any employment that you add additionally, the information will be asked to you, and when you enter it, automatically your employment plan will have been created. And the procurement plan, that is also going to be created in an equivalent way with the budget that you have entered. Any number that you enter will be associated and linked to the budget. And the Annex E is the logical framework matrix. It's a sine qua non document. It's a summary of the project. It's a logical framework matrix, and it is going to be in the Word format, and the draft will be accessible on the platform or the website, and we are expecting you to fill out that document. And then we have a supporting documents section, and there are certain supporting documents, and the detailed information is in the application stage available, but there are certain drafts, and those drafts are presented both in the website and the platform. So if you cannot access any documents, you can access them through the website and the platform. Declaration by the applicant with an original signature, that is the wet signature, and declaration to consent to information sharing, declaration about the statement of no finalized user transactions, and the document regarding the result of the inquiry made through the link KIC for banned and restricted companies, certificate of activity provided that it is obtained at almost 3 months prior to the application date, or the NACE code, and the capacity report obtained from the Chamber of Commodities and Exchanges, and which companies it should be created for, is available in the web page of the Turkish Chamber of Commodities and Exchanges. If it has to be there, we want that. And we want an up-to-date trade registry journal. We want a share ledger. And whether it's a woman inclusive company or not, this is going to give us an information about that. And this is among the documents asked. A copy of the identity cards and passports of certificates of residence of the partners holding 25% or more shares, tax sign board, and the latest withholding tax and the monthly premium service statement for the Social Security. This determines whether they are small, medium, or large enterprises. And also corporate income tax return, provisional tax return, if any, with the current version, the audit reports, and the audit reports by external auditors, or legal audit reports, and in other cases, the accounts for the last 2 years, financial years, that are authorized, signed by the authorized representative of certified public accountants or independent accountants and financial advisors. And also we need a copy of the notarized documents and certified signatures for the authorized representatives of the applicant, showing that they have been decided to apply for the sub-grant. The current debt situation is important. They shouldn't have a social security or tax debt, and we ask to see that document, the document that shows the current debt status. But if the company has structured the debt, we also ask for the submission of a document showing that the debt has been structured. And other than the human resources or machinery and equipment procurement, we want to see the market research document. For instance, if you're buying a machinery or equipment, when you're writing that figure, based on what are you writing? The market research document, a single market research document for each budget item, including planned procurement of goods, works, and services, and the CVs, curriculum vitae of project key staff in the format available on the website, and the exclusional statement, and the workplace opening and operating permits, and the environmental impact assessment, EIA decision. These are included in the guidelines if they have environmental licenses and permits. But if these are relevant, if these are available, then we want them. And the commitment letters of the applicant, they're available in draft form. Just name, last name, the signature of the authorized people will be sufficient for us.
I showed you how the applications will be submitted. When you click on the apply button of our website, you can access the platform for the application, and all applications are expected to be submitted online. We do not get any printed versions of the application. So all the documents are expected to be uploaded to the platform. And the applications can be submitted in Turkish or English, because we receive a lot of questions about that. It doesn't matter if you submit your application in Turkish or English, it's not going to influence scoring. They are going to be evaluated equally. And you can submit these documents both in Turkish and English documents. I mean, all the sub-grant application guidelines and access and related documents are, according to them, can be published or submitted in Turkish and English documents. And the deadline for the submission of the applications is the 28th of February 2022 at 5 p.m. And if you submit your applications after this deadline and time, they are not going to be accepted. They will be rejected because there may be some technical problems on the system. Please do not leave the submission of the application to the last moment. The earlier that you submit your application, the better for you. And if you if you need some clarifications or some question marks about the application process, you can send your questions and issues to kalkınma.com.tr. So in the deadline, it was mentioned that the questions can be sent by email no later than 20 days before the deadline for the call for proposal. But now we modified it. We added and we extended it for about 3 to 4 days. We will try to answer your questions till the deadline as much as possible, but of course you are recommended to finalize all your application process before that deadline. Frequently asked questions were already published on our website. There are around 40 questions. There are hundreds of questions that were received, and we compiled them and we published the frequently asked questions and answered them, and we published the answers on our website. If there are some issues that are not clear in the application guideline, you can maybe find your answers in the frequently asked questions. And under the application for specific questions, we do not provide individual replies for any recommendation for your specific individual projects. We can't say yes or no to such individual questions because these are all clear in the rules and also in the application guidelines. So during the evaluation process, we can reply to such individual questions because there may be thousands of questions maybe, and we have to respond to to thousands of questions equally. For that reason, we cannot provide any individual replies to any specific questions or private questions. So after the applications are received, we will start our evaluation process. There are 4 steps. The first one is administrative and eligibility check for all applicants, and as regards to compliance with the other rules, we will make an evaluation. If there is any gap or any error or mistake, the application may be rejected. Then after that, the technical and financial evaluation will be subjected to those who pass the step 1 eligibility check and administrative and eligibility check, and there will be an evaluation process under the supervision of our bank. But independent evaluators or assessors will carry out this evaluation process under the supervision of our bank. And there are certain criteria which I'm going to show in the following slides about the criteria for evaluation, and we will try to make an objective evaluation at this step. And if those pass this step 2, environmental and social assessment will be performed. This is environmental and social assessment step. As I said before, all applicants, after passing these first 2 steps, will be subjected to environmental and social assessment. Environmental and social management framework and criteria of the World Bank and TKYB will be taken into consideration for the evaluation of environmental and social aspects. And also additional information and documents may be requested at this step. And if the applicant also passes this step, the contracting authority's decision will be notified to the applicants. Our bank will notify the applicants about the result of this evaluation. It may be negative or positive, and according to the result of the decision of the contracting authority, applicants will be notified, and then sub-grant contracts will be signed. I'd like to talk about this evaluation grades according to what criteria we are going to perform technical and financial evaluation. The first one is relevance. The proposal is primarily evaluated for the targeted increase in formal employment. This has a score of 10. And also the second one is financial and operational capacity. It's going to be assessed whether the applicant has eligible capacity to carry out the submitted project activities, whether they will be able to fulfill the condition for employment or creating employment under operational capacity and eligible capacity. The third one is methodology part. This is going to have the highest point, which is 45 points. And the fourth one is cost effectiveness. The cost effectiveness of the project budget will be evaluated. And the fifth one is sustainability. After the end of the project, if the project applicant will be able to maintain the results and outputs of the project, it's going to have 15 points, and the total score is going to be 100. And 2 independent assessors will assess the projects, and the threshold for success of an applicant is minimum 65 points, and in the methodology part, over 45 points, they must get 20, minimum 20. If they can't get the scores, they will be disqualified. The methodology has a score of 45 total in total. Under these 4 criteria, they are going to be evaluated. First, how consistent is the overall design of the sub-project? And it's going to have 10 points. And the second step, does the proposal include additional refugee employment? If we are going to check the percentage of additional refugee employment. If the percentage of additional refugee employment is more than 50%, it's going to get the full score, which is 5 points. And there is a certain proportional situation. So there are some scores, very weak, enough, good, or very good. So the third one is, does the proposal include additional employment of any female employees? These are, of course, our priorities in this project. So the percentage of additional female employment will be evaluated, and similarly, percentage of additional female employment to the total additional employment will be also evaluated. There are certain percentages and points allocated for that. And the fourth one is, it will vary depending on the small, medium, or large-scale enterprises. For example, for a small enterprise, full points will be assigned for 4 additional employments. They will get 25 scores. But if it creates 3 additional employments, it's going to get 16 additional employments. So for every additional employment, 1.5 points will be given, and for the large enterprises, 0.60 to 50 points will be given for each additional employment. Full points will be given for 40 additional employments for full score. I talked about evaluation and selection applications, of course. Let's have a look at the deadlines or indicative timetable. Deadline for requesting any qualification from the contracting authorities, 8th of February, but as I said before, we postponed it. We are collecting your questions now as well. But of course, we have special requests from you because most of the questions are in the application guideline. When you do not look into the application guideline thoroughly, there may be some issues. Of course, we're expecting you to review the application guideline thoroughly, and please check the frequently asked questions on our website. And last date on which clarifications are issued by the contracting authority is 18th February, and deadline for the submission of application is 28th of February by 5 p.m. and it's not going to be extended. And administrative eligibility check step 1, the deadline is the 31st of March. And for the technical and financial evaluation, deadline is 15th of May. For environmental and social assessment, the deadline is 15th of July, and the deadline for notification decision of awarding is the 1st of August 2022, and the subgrant contract signature deadline is 15th of September 2022. Of course, these are indicative timetables and they may change, and whenever there is a change, we're going to announce it on our project website. You can see the key features of the grant program in general. So I would like to finalize my question at this point. Thank you very much for your attention. So if you have any questions, you can also ask your questions to Kayıt at kalkınma.com. Thank you very much, Eren. As Eren mentioned, for the questions, actually, the deadline for the submission is 28th of February. You can submit your questions 10 days before that deadline of submission. But we receive a lot of questions, so the deadline for submission of application is 28th of February, and for your questions, the deadline is 24th of February. We are extending it to the last moment because we also need some time to answer, to reply back to you, and you will finalize your application. For that reason, the deadline for your questions will be 24th of February. Then you can finalize your application till 28th of February. Thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I'd like to ask the audience now for their questions because we received some questions from the online audience, and we are going to summarize the frequently asked questions. But if you have now questions, please tell us now, as we are all here in person. Please speak to the microphone so that everyone can hear. I'm a mechanical engineer at TAT Global company. The owner is Emel, female, holding 50% of the shares. Under Frit 1, she established the company by getting entrepreneurship training, and its activity started in 2019, but the company was established on the 15th of February 2020. So we are going to celebrate our anniversary tomorrow. So Emel Hanım is a Syrian refugee holding 50% of the company. She employs refugee women and refugees, and she had a startup for export, and she has some branches in the country. She has different targets for growth. So I checked the application form previously. I wanted to fill out that form, but because of that criteria of 2019, I could not proceed with most of the steps, and because of 1.5 months of difference for the establishment of the company and for your criteria, we can't apply for that. Are you flexible in that? Ayşegül Hanım, let's start with you. Thank you very much for this question. Unfortunately, we are not flexible for that because we have to stop at certain date, and we decided it as 2 years with the World Bank. But as you can see, the program is not designed to support the startups. There are many other entrepreneurship supports, support programs, supporting and assisting the startups. Are criteria that the company must have been established 2 years ago before the date of the call for proposal. If they don't have any employees, but they were established many years ago, they are not eligible applicants either. So hopefully you can be supported through other programs. If you open a new program after this point, we will take back suggestion into consideration, but we have a criterion for 2 years for the establishment of that company. Yes, please. Mesva Sağlık Factory Director. We produce hospital beds, and we also employ Syrian refugees. From ILO projects, we get support for Syrian refugees. And under this program, can we also have access to your support? And secondly, there are grants and loans. Are they going to be subject to the same program, or is the form of the loan different because we are asked to choose any of them? I'm one of them, not both of them. Thank you very much. ILO program for the same people, for the same staff members, for the same employees or machinery, equipment, or materials and goods supported by ILO program, you cannot get support from our program. I mean, for the same budget items under FRIT or in another EU-funded program, you cannot have access to both at the same time. But you may have a project with ILO, but you may have a different project with us. So of course we can support that one, that project, which is different from ILO's project. And the second one is about the loans and grants. Our grant component has two sub-grant components. The first one is direct lending, and TKYB is going to provide the direct lending to large enterprises employing more than 250 employees. And if you have already benefited from any loan component, it may be direct lending or Apex, you may not get a grant. So if you choose grant, you may not use loan. But of course, this should be considered on the basis of individual company. The same company may have different activities or may have different investments. For the participating financial institutions, for the loans, you can get further information from them. In Apex lending, as TKYB, we are going to provide the loan to the participating financial institutions. We have a contract with them, but of course we identify and determine the general rules and criteria for the program. And they will provide the loans to the SMEs according to those rules. Of course, the risk will be evaluated by the PFIs. We do not get involved in that process. We just draw the framework. There are certain priorities and general rules. In line with these rules, the PFIs provide the loans to SMEs. There was a question in the back. Hello, my name is Osman Oğuz. I'm from 5M Gıda. Regarding employment of Syrians, you know, there are some work permit processes which take around 1 month. And sometimes the employees may leave their jobs on their own will. So regarding the duration, I could not see any clear information about those employees who may leave in the meantime. For the employment of Syrians, first of all, the companies are expected to employ Syrian refugees. TKYB is not going to provide any guidance to you, but with İşkur, Turkish Employment Agency, and Turkish Red Crescent Community Center, and DG for International Labor, in order to get further information about the refugees who may be employed for work permits. You can get work permits in shorter times if you collaborate with İşkur. If they take an initiative, if employees on their own initiative leave their jobs, and then you know, the duration of the project is 21 months in total, but we're expecting it to create and maintain the employment for 18 months. And in this duration the employees leave, you're expecting it to create new employment instead, to replace that one who leaves their job. So based on the actual cost, we are going to provide you the support. So please keep that in your mind. You said that privately owned companies cannot benefit from this project. So when can the privately owned companies have access to such projects, or do you plan to organize and implement such a project? Of course, we are working on several projects. We have some possible future projects as well. But before they become real, we cannot provide you the details. But in this project, the unlimited companies, private companies, cannot be beneficiary. Of course, in this project. Of course, these are not our own criteria. You know that the grant program is funded by the European Union Bridge 2 funding, and this is managed also by the World Bank. We implement it as a bank. For that reason, these criteria, conditions and terms were determined by the EU and the World Bank. And as these are the rules and conditions, we have to convey these rules and conditions to you. But you are right. We will take that into consideration in the future. Thank you. On the right side and then the other one. Hello, my name is Tuncal Bakkal. I'm Human Resources Manager. During application phase to KAIST, let's say that we have 250 employees. But in the sub-project, we are planning to employ 20 people. So when the project is approved, but people left, and the overall number of the employees decreased to 230, are we going to employ 250 plus 20, or are we going to continue with the number, maintain the number in the sub-project? This is my first question, and I have another question. Should I wait for the answer first? Yeah, let's answer this question, and then we can get your second question. Hello. First of all, under the scope of the sub-project, throughout your application period, we are going to check the number of the employees that you have at the time of application. We're going to check and evaluate the number of your employees at the time of application, and till the signature of the contract. If there is an abnormal fluctuation in the number of the employees, we will take that into consideration as well. For example, you stated 250 employees, but in 3 months this decreased to 200. We will ask you to provide the justification for that, but of course, we are going to check the additional employment you will create on top of the existing ones. This is the performance criteria, existing employees plus the new employees. And second question, in the sub-project, the people that we're going to employ, for example, we have an investment plan such as expanding our capacity. A new line was established, machinery will be purchased in July. Let's say we purchased and took delivery of this machinery, and I will have to employ people in August after application. So after September, the cost will be supported by you, but for the social insurance, can we register them to the Social Security institution 1 or 2 months before that? Dilek Hanım, over to you. We can say that the sub-project should be considered as a whole. Starting from the signature of the project contract till the end of the project contracts, all these employment movements will be taken into consideration. People who were employed before the signature of the project contract cannot be considered as included in the project. Because a new employment created after the signature of the project contract will be taken into consideration. The employment, purchasing costs, and other expenses will be supported after the project contract is signed. So we need to make our investments according to your deadlines, right? So in this sub-project, let's say we want to employ 16 people, 8 of them are Syrians, and we signed the contract. And we could not achieve that target number of the Syrians. I could only employ 2 refugees, for example, instead of 8 that I indicated in my application. What we can do is we will ask you to reach that target, achieve that target, 50% Turkish, 50% refugee if you declare so. But of course, this is going to be evaluated on the basis of each project. We cannot provide you a general answer at this point, but if you indicate that you're going to employ 50% Turkish and 50% refugees, at least you should have a variation of minimum 10 to 20%, and we will expect you to achieve that target. If people leave their jobs in the meantime, what are you going to do? Based on the same criteria, after they leave, you can find another employer. You can replace that one with a new one. But from 18 to 21 months, this criteria for 18 months of employment can be achieved at maximum rate. In Gaziantep, employment market or job market is very mobile, and also job turnover is very high. The average duration of an employee to stay in a job is maximum 3 months. So they change and they rotate a lot and very frequently. We may start with 10 people, and we may not find a new Syrian instead of to replace the one that already left the job. So we may employ the Turkish ones instead. So are we still going to continue implementing the project or stop it? The purpose is to create employment, but in doing so, the European Union also wants to see Turkish citizens' employment and refugee employment and a balanced employment of Turkish citizens and refugees. You will have an employment and growth plan in your application showing how many Turkish citizens and refugees you plan to employ. Of course, we will expect you to comply with that plan. There may be some ups and downs, of course. We will get the justifications from you and we will discuss with you. Sometimes the grants may be decreased to solve this problem, because the amount that you apply for is based on your initial plan. But if you can't achieve that initial plan, we may continue with a lower amount of grant plan. Of course, I understand you may have some hesitations or reservations about Syrian refugees. It is the case all around Turkey, not only in Gaziantep, as far as we can understand. Of course, as much as possible, with great balance, you try to continue employing Turkish citizens and refugees. With the employment of only Turkish citizens, we don't want your project to be implemented only through the employment of Turkish citizens. We wanted to have a balance. You may not achieve 50%, 50%. Of course, it cannot be that precise in certain situations for interim periods. You may have some tolerance thresholds, but immediately, in the shortest time possible, as soon as possible, try to replace them and try to create new employment. This is a requirement of the project. Thank you very much.
There is a hand in the back, the lady. Thank you. I have already received the answers to some questions. My name is Sulhan Özal. I want to receive some information about supporting documents, because some documents, our company is not in that scope, and there are a lot of documents required. And when we look at the system and in the explanation presentation, it says attach, if any, and if not, add an equivalent document. So what do we need to do? If we don't have that at all, or if we're not in the scope of that document. Now, about that, you're right, we should have explained further details if available in the guidelines, but in the platform there are some mandatory documents. We expect them to be uploaded, but when you don't upload any documents that are not mandatory, you won't encounter any issues. Please note that. Let's say workplace opening and license. Let's say you don't have that, but you applied, then you're expected to upload the application document, the action that the company has taken. Or you could be a company that is not subject to capacity report, and then when you upload the activity document, you can say we're not obliged to obtain a capacity report, and then we will know that your company is not subject to it. The supporting documents, we keep receiving questions about this and we try to answer them, and because we don't associate it with many strict rules such as NACE codes, different entities are trying to apply, and therefore the rules are not applicable for all of them. So by making explanations and by presenting what you have, if need be, at the administrative inspection stage, we will be getting back to you about the documents anyway. Yes. First of all, welcome to our city. I'm the coordinator of İpek Yolu Development Agency. Now the budgeting, you said you're going to make it in euro. Maybe it's available in the guidelines, but I just wanted to present a reminder. The euro exchange rate, which day or whether it's the central bank's rate, which one will be taken as the basis. And as you know, there is a big fluctuation and volatility in exchange rates, and the project duration is long. How will the project react to such changes? Maybe mid-year, there could be increases in the minimum wage, or the labor costs will increase. So how will the project adapt or keep up or react to these changes? Thank you, Mr. Vakkas, for your question. Now, your first question, yes, the budget is going to be prepared in euros, and the transfers will be made in euros. And the project budget cost estimate, while it was drafted, the companies will be asked to use the FX selling rate of the Turkish Central Bank on the date of the project. And at the implementation stage, that budget item is going to be paid in euros based on the actualized figures. And your second question, there could be fluctuations in our country due to the FX rates, and the losses due to FX rate are not considered as eligible costs. And due to the fluctuations, the companies we look at whether the company is profit or not. I think I answered it this way. Please, yes. Hi, I'm coming from Kilis. My name is Ahmet Bayraktar. About the foreign employment, they could be Syrian citizens, but they could also be eligible for Turkish citizenship, or they could have already acquired Turkish citizenship. So do they count as foreigners? Number one. And number two, just like Mr. Eren said, in the slightest mistake during the course of application, your project can be eliminated. The İpek Yolu Silk Road Development Agency announced it, but there are no advisors or consultants. Would there be any consultants at the application stage? Would you recommend any companies? Because there's a very detailed cost calculation and everything, and we will not be able to do it individually. So would you recommend any guidance companies to us? Thank you very much. And unfortunately, there is no consultancy company that we can offer you. Just write us and we will answer you. kayıtes.org about the general, you will prepare it. Don't worry. It's not that difficult, and we can support you. What we expect from the companies is, tell us what you do. What is your activity? What work do you do? When we read the project application form, we want to be able to understand that. What kind of a capacity? Do you have 10 machines, 20 machines? What kind of an activity is there? And what do you want to do? What are you going to do to create this employment? Because we're not starting with the grant or the project. There's an activity, a plan, a project. Yes. Let me put it this way, just like I said, we cannot offer you any consultancy companies, but when you examine the guideline, the application form comes with the explanations at every stage. And with the supporting documents, please do ask us whenever you have questions. That's why we're definitely getting back to you. We don't ever leave anything unanswered. And so let us be your consultant, says Mr. Ayşegül, free of charge. And one thing that you will be careful about, this is how the procedure is going. You submit your application, and then there will be an administrative, an external team, not us, a consultant team that we will be hiring, and we are at the stage of recruiting them. And that team will check if all the documents are in place, if the information has been entered, and if there is anything incomplete there is a risk that you can be eliminated. So be careful that that doesn't happen. Whatever is asked for, please make note of adding it there. And the second stage is independent assessors will be assessing the project. So is this a sound and firm project for the future, looking in, like I will procure this, I will grow in that way, I will procure these people, these the equipment, and this is my objective. You know, we're not chasing fancy words. We're just trying to understand what's happening, your project. So you don't need huge consultants, long sentences, fancy words, or catchy phrases. You can say, we will hire X many people for this objective. This is our goal. This is how we will increase our production. And you know what we mean by a past of 2 years. Have you worked up until now? Are all your feet on the ground, you know? And once it passes through the independent assessor, it will be filtered, and then it's going to go to the contract and agreement stage. And the environmental assessment will also be done. But to begin with, your information and your documents should be uploaded there almost fully, nearly fully. Make sure of that. Now, Miss Emine, the company is active since 1985, but because of the present day circumstances, there's a decline in sales and marketing activities. So what we're thinking is we want to recruit a team for marketing and recruit a food engineer for researches, so we can enter into new products. The company works on a seasonal basis. When it's high season, we are 20 to 30 people, but when it's off season, we have 5 people. So we want to recruit 4 people, two of them foreigners and 2 of them Turks. This is what we're intending to do. But you know, there are the tips and tricks, you know. Of course, we will work and we will prepare and we will get the consent forms from the notary public, a declaration form. You know, I don't want it to be for nothing. You know, I don't want to make a mistake. Even if you have 10 or 20 questions, do make a list of them and ask us, you know, because this is why we have these platforms. And our objective is not to reject the grant or send it. We want it to, and the EU's objective is that, and this is why the World Bank is managing it. So please ask your questions without any hesitation. It could be the simplest implementation questions or more sophisticated questions. Consider us as your consultants. You know, we will be more than happy and willing to provide this consultancy. And this is applicable for all the companies and for all the applications. And for the first part of your question, Syrians that have acquired Turkish citizenship, their status is different. And our program is Syrians under temporary protection and other nationals, of course, and also individuals under international protection. So the ones that have acquired Turkish citizenship, they are subject to another legislation. And if you look at the International Labor General Directorate legislation, so this is only for the refugees under temporary protection and international protection. Yes, the gentleman in the front. Not audible. When we are completing the application stage, if there is a change, how do we go back? Can we go back and change that? Let's say we completed it today, but then we saw deviations in the calculations. Can we go back to the initial steps and make a correction? After you complete your application, you cannot make any changes, but before completing it, you can save it in draft form. And at that stage, you can go back to any step and make any changes. Let's assume that you completed your application and everything's over. And then you said, I want to update my application. You can send a request letter to our website, and pursuant to that, we cancel your application and you submit a new application, provided that it is within the call period. That is not after 5 p.m. on February 28th. The gentleman in the back. Now, let's say I'm a joint stock company, and because of certain circumstances, my company is passive. I have a company, but I'm inactive. So this project would be just for me. And in this project, I can hire 100 or 200 people or more or less. Let's say I've got 0 employees right now. It's inactive. Ms. Dilek? Now, in order for you to benefit from the support, you should have at least 1 employee. Companies without employees are not deemed eligible to receive the support. The lady on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side. Let's begin with the left-hand side. Sorry. The microphone is on the left, that's why. So it goes to the gentleman first. Hi. My name is Nazmi Oktay. I don't know if it has changed, but in Turkey, in order to employ Syrians, there was a threshold of 10%. So in the subsequent projects, this employment, if we employ more than 10%, is there a solution? Ms. Naz? Thank you for your question. Within the scope of our project, the legislation, the provisions of the legislation are valid and effective. We expect to comply with them. But as for the work permits, the Ministry of the Ministry of Employment, they are subject to international labor assessment, and your application will be assessed within that scope. So the relevant entities' explanations and the newly issued legislation should be kept up with. There is going to be an addition to Ms. Naz's explanation. So in this regard, the International Labor General Directorate's activities and opinions are known. So do make your planning without any hesitation, because what matters is you submitting your application with your justifications, because this is assessed on a company basis, but we don't want this to be a restriction, an obstacle. But as you know, in the legislation, there are certain sectors that the foreigners cannot work in, and there are certain rules which bring about in certain restrictions, but that 10% won't create an obstacle. So do make your planning accordingly. My question is about formal employment, but other than that, a small portion of the grant is about machinery and technical equipment. Can you please expand on that? And the social media investment, PR work, becoming a brand, will they all be included in that technical support section? Thank you. Dilek, the question is for you. Let me summarize it this way. Human resources is going to correspond to 70 to 90% of the budget, and the expenditures other than that, with some, auxiliary costs or administrative costs, excluding them for others, you're going to be subject to the World Bank's investment project financing debtors and supply arrangements and rules. And there's a commercial practices. There are certain practices under the commercial practices title, and the details will be published later in the implementation guidelines that we will be publishing a few months later. And these are going to be based on commercial tendencies, like 3 proposals. However you do your procurement is going to be subject to that, and within that scope, if you examine the budget in detail, it could be machinery and equipment, it could be other expenditures, it could be consultancy or software programs, and all of these can be financed in the 10 to 30% portion. And let me make a reminder, because we receive a lot of questions, and sometimes we answered the gentleman, and they said these recruitments, when will we be made? Can they be made prior? No, all throughout the duration. And how about the investments, all these procurements? From the beginning to the end of the project agreement. So you cannot say, I made this as investment. A small scale construction work, it corresponds to 5% of the direct eligible costs. It could be repair, etc. And all of these should not be before, but starting from the beginning of the project. Let me remind it now that it's time. I hope this answers your question. Microphone, please. So that 100%, just like you said, there was a repair during the course of the project, and the amount there, does it not cover 100%, or is the employer expected to put his hand under the stone? Is there a distribution or a breakdown of costs? Yes. 50% to 70% of the project budget constitutes the grants. So the payments and the transfers will be on a progress report basis or a progress payment basis. So every, like 70% of each expenditure will be the eligibility. So it's like the remaining 30% is co-financing by the company owner. And that is expected to be in a balanced way. For instance, it's not about, let's say, the company has made 70% of the employment in the first month, and let me buy the machinery later on the 17th month later on. No, that is not expected, but the expenditures are made simultaneously to maintain the project integrity, because you're saying I will procure this recruit these people. So the integrity and the guidelines, and we receive a lot of questions about this. This is how the payments will be done. First of all, they are expected to be done in 4 slices. 10% is advance payment, preliminary payment. So this is in the first month after the agreement. So the 10% of the total sub-grant amount, and the other payments are on a progress basis. So let me explain it this way. First of all, you make your expenditures for human resources or machinery and equipment or consultancy or whatnot. So all the expenditures will be done accordingly, and then the costs, whether they are eligible or not eligible, we are going to be contributing to your expenditures as supports. And the second slot is going to be up to 40% of the sub and the grant, and the third is again up to 40% of the sub grant, and the final is up to 10% of the sub grant. And once the final is done, then it will be completed. I wanted to explain that as well. Hi, my question is about the minimum employment duration in projects. It's 18 months, but do we need to employ them for 18 months? And the other issue is, I think it's going to be in September. So the minimum wage for 2023 is not explained or announced, but when the budgets are prepared, is there a flexibility, or what kind of a path will be taken? And also in terms of sustainability after the project, is there an employment guarantee? Mr. Caner, these are for your questions, because there are 3 questions. Both in the presentation and in the questions we have explained, and the minimum employment duration is 18 months. You know, your total project duration is 21 months, but for 18 months, we will expect you to maintain the employment that you have offered. And this is going to be cross-checked with your records as well as the Social Security records. And the second, third, and the fourth payment slices are going to be made after checking the social security records. So the grant payments will be made in the actualized employment. And the other question was, will minimum wage if it increases? Now, what we expect from you when you're preparing the budget is to prepare it in euro figures, and the central bank foreign exchange selling rate at the time of the preparation of the budget. So this is going to be your estimate budget, your projected expected budget. And the actualized situation, you won't be expected to have FX losses or FX profits, but you won't have any losses because it's going to be based on actualization. Was there a third question? And also following the project, we need to give you a guarantee for employment. When we're giving the support, it's conditional on 18 months, but of course, for sustainability purposes, in an ideal project, we would expect you to maintain this recruitment after 18 months, but there won't be any sanctions imposed or anything on the bank side after month 18. We won't come knocking on your door, but they can come from the EU or the World Bank, let me tell you that. It's going to be too technical, but when you're submitting your predictions, you're making an estimate for 18 months, and you will definitely take into account a Turkish lira price increase. But when you're setting it in euros or FX, on the date, your calculation at the time of submitting the project is going to be in euros, and the grant will be observed in euros, and we don't there won't be gains, but you won't have losses. I would like to make an addition. And we have mentioned this in the presentation, but the newly employed Turkish and Syrian and refugee employees, at the same time, our bank will have a technical support component, and the newly employed employees will receive wonderful training courses, capacity development training courses, and this will be mandatory. So at the end of the project, you will have a fully equipped set of people who you don't want to let go, whose employment you want to maintain. And the objective is to make sure that the employment is sustainable and permanent. I would like to make a small addition. We have shown you in the assessment, and an important part is going to be about sustainability. So please prepare your application taking that into account. It's going to make sure that you get a higher score. Are there any other questions from the hall? I'm checking. Yes, please. I have a question. The persons who will be employed, they will either be under temporary protection or Turkish, but is the same applicable for company owners? Do they need to be Turks or under temporary protection? No, there is no restriction. They could be Turkish foreigner. There is no restriction. It's going to be a company in Turkey. It's going to be a limited company or a joint stock company. And other than that, the owner being a Turk or a foreigner, it could be Syrian, they could be Dutch, they could be Turkish, but it has to be a company that is operating in Turkey. And there was a question in the front. First of all, Mr. Caner wants to add something. You don't have to be under temporary protection, because other refugees are included in this. So it's not about Turks only, or it's not about Syrians under temporary protection. Let's not restrict them. I'm the technical advisor of the Gaziantep Chamber of Commerce. The interest rates and the terms of the loan. Can you give us information? And will this be equally distributed to 24 provinces, or will they be assessed on a project basis? Now, about the loan, for detailed information, this platform will not be a suitable platform, and therefore, just like we have told you before, the Direct Development and Investment Bank or Apex intermediary. There are 6 leasing companies, the names of which are provided in the presentation. You can consult them and you can receive detailed information about the project. And there will be a restriction on the quantity and the term. There's a minimum maturity date, but the lending institutions are free to provide flexibility in maturities, the investment bank, but the interest will change on the credit profile, the applicant, but it's not necessary to go through the bank or the leasing companies, because this is, we're discussing the grant issue, but let us emphasize one thing. If you receive grants, you cannot draw down loans or vice versa. So on a provincial basis, there are no quotas, and this is going to be assessed based on applications, and the eligible applications will receive grants. So there is no quota or criteria or restriction on a provincial basis. So the Gaziantep area and its surrounding, our doors are wide open for your applications. Are there any other questions?
If not, we can answer the questions of our online audience. So while answering their questions, you will also hear the answers. Let's check the questions now. Now, expense items, are they going to be in euro? Yeah, we can answer very briefly. Yes, they will be in euros. Can we employ only Turkish citizens, Caner Bey? We don't impose companies to employ only Turkish citizens, or they must employ refugees. Of course, the projects can be based on only employment of Turkish citizens or without any employment of the women. But as you can see in our evaluation grades, employment of refugees, Syrians, and women is supported and encouraged with higher scores. So if you have additional refugee and women employment, then you will get higher scores and you will get higher chances of being eligible. Can the projects based on export be eligible? Yeah, there is no sectoral restriction as we said, but it would be better if we could provide further information. It can be any project. Of course, we cannot clearly say yes or no directly to this question, but there may be, yeah, it is possible. No restriction, no restriction. For the investment project, we are going to implement this investment project before the contract signature, and the support will come months later. When our project is accepted, will the grant be given? The answer is clear. If you make your investments after approval and after signature, we're expecting you to make your investments after signature and after approval. Are we going to, is it optional for us to choose loan or grant, or are you designating the ones who will choose grant or loans? You will choose either grant or loan depending on the conditions, whichever of them is attractive to your company or to you. Caner, if the companies do not have any employees at all, can they apply and create new employment? We already answered this question, but when we determine the scale of the enterprises, we took the number of the employees into consideration, and companies with less than 50 employees, they are small scale enterprises, but we want to see at least one employee in those small scale enterprises. So those who do not have any employees at the moment, they are not eligible. If the companies have social security debts and also debt restructuring, can they apply? Yes, they can, but they should show at the document of financial restructuring of the debts, but they should not have any defaulted loans, or they should not have any overdue debts. We have a dental health polyclinic in a touristic area. We are going to create a branch to diversify services and equipment, machinery, and support staff and professional staff will be hired. Can we participate in this project? Yes, so this is a specific question. Under this scope, devices and equipment and machinery will be purchased, and additional human resources are planned in the project budgeting, and they can participate in this program. But of course, an important note, you should consult the DG for International Labor. Syrians under temporary protection cannot work in certain occupations, and you can follow the most up-to-date information at that DG. But what we can recommend to this companies that for your Turkish employees and foreign employees, they will be healthcare staff and support staff. If you position them in these categories very carefully, if you plan very carefully, you can participate in the project. Ayşegül Hanım, so if the NACE code is in dangerous category, there are excluded sectors, the list of sectors and activities that are not financed or funded according to the environmental social policy of TKYB, according to the World Bank standard. You can check those sectors. So I do not know what you mean by that dangerous sector, dangerous activity according to the NACE codes. It is not in that specification in our program. From environmental and social aspects, investments that are at higher risks will not be supported in this project. For that reason, you need to check if that activity is in those sectors or not. And after that, we can form an idea or view about that. With that detail, that level of detail, we can't clearly answer this question properly. There was a question, sometimes they cannot distinguish between the questions. So supporting documents, invoices, payrolls, bank statements, and they should be based on actual costs, verifiable actual costs. But while just designing the project at the application phase, we don't have any invoice or etc. What are we going to submit for supporting documents? While preparing your project proposal, it is a proposal, the name suggests. You will use pro forma invoices. You will get some quotas or codes or rate offers and pro forma invoices, and also expenses in the existing employment structure can be taken on the basis, and there are some legal expenses and costs, they cannot be lower than that. And also for the people having the right qualifications that you want to hire, you should calculate the expenses accordingly. If your expenses are quite different for a support staff, for example, if you're going to pay a wage for an engineer to a support staff, this will be found out during the evaluation, and that it will be subjected to revision for consistency. It will not be so meaningful. For the implementation stage, we are going to check the actual costs, bank statements, and also invoices, and all kinds of supporting and verifying documents will be taken into consideration. So the employees that we're going to employ for a condition of 18 months, let's assume that that person works for 10 months and then left. With the replacement of that person for another 8 months, are we going to fulfill that criteria of 18 months? Of course, there is high mobility in labor force market. This is quite normal to leave the job. So it is not on the basis of an individual employee, but it's on the basis of the duration. The total duration of employment will be taken into consideration. Of course, 10 plus 8 months will be accepted as 18 months in total. So these were the questions from the platform. There are some frequently asked questions. Is it compulsory to employ women? How can we answer this question? It is not mandatory to employ women. In certain sectors, it may not be suitable, not necessary, it may not be possible, but we are supporting women employment. And in every activity and in every sector, it is important that there is women employment. If you just check the evaluation form in this sense, you will see that there is an additional score assigned to women employment. Of course, this is going to encourage and reinforce and strengthen the proposal to get a higher score. What is important is that we need to distinguish women inclusive companies from women employment. There are certain criteria for women inclusive companies, as I explained in my presentation. This is something good, and we want to know if the company is women inclusive or not. Of course, not every company employing women has to be necessarily women inclusive company. There may be a company which is not women inclusive, but it may employ women, and they will get the relevant scores according to the employment of women. And what should be the qualifications of the employees to be hired? This is another question. Maybe you can answer this question. Under this project, the qualifications of the employees that you will hire all up to the applicant firms, because every company may need different qualifications. It may be a skilled worker, it may be an engineer, a support staff, and it is all up to you to plan the necessary requirements. You are expected to submit it in the employment plan. Regarding capacity report, there are some questions. For example, the validity date or expiry date of our capacity report will be 26th of February. Will it be a barrier if we upload it to the platform because the expiry date already passed? So in the applications, do we have to submit a capacity report? This is a general question. Dilek, could you please answer this question now? In terms of legislation, if you're operating in a sector that obliges you to submit capacity report, you have to submit that capacity report to you. But if you don't have that obligation, you don't have to submit. You can make an explanation to us, stating that instead of that document, you can make that explanation to us. For example, let's say that the expiry of that capacity report is 26th of February, and if you submit your application before 26th of February, we can consider that capacity report valid, but of course you should apply for the new one, for the new capacity report. Yeah, before 26th of February, if you submit your application, it will be wise. But of course, you should also submit that you applied for the new capacity report. Otherwise, as of 26th of February, it may be assumed that the company will be closed. So if the type of the company changes, do you also apply the requirements of 2 years of establishment? So 2 years, at least 2 years before the date of call for proposal, the companies should be established, but we don't have any restriction for the change of type or category of the company. So if the category of the company has already changed before 2 years, they can apply to our program. With multiple telephone numbers, can we log into the KAIS platform? Yeah, only just one telephone number is expected to be used. So just indicate just one telephone number. I think most of the questions were already answered. Companies who do not have any employees and companies who have facilities in different provinces. For these provinces, can they apply for the grants separately for each of these activities in different provinces? Companies, applicant companies, and eligibility criteria of the applicants show that they should have a legal entity, and every company can only submit one grant application. But if the company has different production facilities and networks in different cities, they should indicate it in the business plan. As long as they are in the selected project provinces, in those provinces they can create employment, and they can be eligible for the grants for that reason. All right. We answered most of the questions, we think, because questions were similar. We don't read each of them. So I'm sure during this application stage, some other questions may cross your minds, some unclear issues might emerge. Please know that we are with you, we are standing by you. Our objective is also to receive your applications in a sound manner. For that reason, we are ready and open for all kinds of support to be provided to you. So you can send your questions from coist.org. Regardless of how many questions you have, please do not hesitate. We will have further information sessions. You may also participate in those sessions. You may want to hear the presentation again, or other people, you may encourage other people in your company to participate in those information sessions. We will be with you, we're standing by you. Hopefully, we will receive good applications from you, healthy applications, complete applications. Hopefully, we will see you again as beneficiaries, hopefully. So if you have questions now, we can get them now. Otherwise, without further ado, we can close the session, adjourn with the session. Thank you very much once again for being with us here in this meeting, for devoting your valuable time to this meeting. On behalf of the Development and Investment Bank of Turkey, my team members and colleagues, and on my behalf, thank you very much.